Namaskar. Am I visible? Am I audible? Can you hear me? Am I audible, Dr. Alka? Okay, thank you. Namaskar. Myself Sangeeta Saxena, professor in the Department of Biotechnology, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow. Our university, on its completion of 25 years, is celebrating its Silver Jubilee this year. In order to commemorate the event, BBAU social media team has initiated Facebook live lecture series under the leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sanjay Singh Ji. Professor Govind Ji Pandey, coordinator, and Dr. Alka, co-coordinator of Facebook live lecture series, are doing a commendable job by providing such a wide platform on Facebook BBAU social media page. Speakers are invited to come and deliver their lecture and talk to a wide range of audience, including academicians, scientists, students, and people from all walk of life. So thank you once again, Professor Govind Ji Pandey and Dr. Alka, for giving me this opportunity to share this platform with all of you, my students, colleagues, scientists, academicians, etc., and share my views on the topic managing and coexisting with COVID-19. So when I am speaking to you on this topic, I have the data with me of today's, and it is very grim, very disappointing. You see, in the whole world, more than 55 lakhs of the patients currently infected, and the death toll is around 3 lakhs. In India, the figure has crossed 1,30,000, and the death toll is roughly 3,000 deaths. So you see, this is very disappointing, very disheartening, depressing, and I will say scary too. So we have to learn to live with this and to manage this disease in a better way, so that we can fight with it and we can come out in a winning position. So the topics which I will be covering on COVID-19 will be of applied value as far as management of the disease is concerned. So first I will take up the origin of this virus, which we say coronavirus. So you see, this all started from November 2019 from the city of Wuhan in China, and there the people started complaining of flu-like symptoms, influenza-like symptoms, coughing, sneezing, problems in upper respiratory tract, and later on we realized that symptoms were a bit different or more severe or less severe depending on the geographical location. So you see, for example, 80% of the people here in India are reported to be asymptomatic too. But now we know this virus not only affects the lung but many other organs, kidney, liver, spleen, etc. also. So you see, the problem is very grave, and the most troublesome part is that this is highly infectious in nature. With the result, soon after its occurrence, it became pandemic in nature. So when this virus was characterized, we came to know that it belongs to the family of virus Coronaviridae. Okay, and we know that Coronaviridae has a large number of coronaviruses. Two of the viruses you are familiar with, and they are SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. They have caused severe acute respiratory syndrome disease and Middle East respiratory syndrome disease. So you see, this virus which occurred now, when this was sequenced and characterized, we came to know that this is a very close cousin of these two viruses, SARS and MERS-CoV. So naturally this virus was named, it was very similar to SARS-CoV, so this virus was named SARS-CoV-2. Okay, and then it was natural to assume, because in the other two cases the virus came from the bat, but it didn't jump directly from bat to human. There were an intermediate animal carrier involved. For example, in case of SARS, the intermediate animal was civet cat. In case of MERS, the intermediate animal was camel. So it is very natural to assume that though it has originated from bat, but it has not jumped directly from bat to human. There has to be a intermediate career animal, and that hunt is still going on. People are working day and night to find out that what are the other possibilities where this virus is still residing as a reservoir. Because you see, it is very important to find out, even if you do complete lockout, complete eradication of the virus, clean up your cities, but this reservoir is still sitting there somewhere in the wild. So chances of such kind of outbreaks in the future will always be there. So research is going on. Some people also speculate, especially the politicians and the media people, they say that this can be a product of genetic engineering also, like this virus is genetically altered in the lab in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and then it was leaked accidentally or deliberately. But you see, those of you who are in the field of genetic engineering, they will appreciate the fact that when you genetically engineer a virus or a target host, you have to, it's not very simple that you cut and paste the sequences here and there. You use certain plasmids, vectors, vehicles to take your gene of interest and then insert it into your target host. So they always leave some kind of imprint, some kind of traces, some kind of footprints which are easily recognizable. So of all the virus sequences, when I say this virus now, from now onwards, coronavirus, I mean SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so when this coronavirus was sequenced, more than 400 isolates of the this virus have been sequenced. There are not any reports that such kind of laboratory or synthetic sequences are found in it. And second thing is this, that the backbone of the virus genome is very natural. You see, when you are going to do genetic engineering, this is not your choice of backbone to genetically alter a virus for this kind of purpose, like biological warfare or genetically altering a virus. So these all reports indicate that this is not a genetically engineered virus in the lab, rather it is a case of natural selection. A very good paper has been published in Nature Medicine in March 2020 by Christine Anderson from Scripps Institute of California, and she and her colleagues have mentioned some very interesting data after analyzing a lot of genome sequencing, and she has reported that there are certain changes in the spike protein. So I have made a model of coronavirus for you people to understand it in a better manner. This is made up of dough and cloves, lockdown effect. So you see, this Dr. Kristen, she has reported that these are the spike proteins. Very soon we will be discussing the structure of this virus also. But right now, when the origin is concerned, this spike protein of the virus is having, SARS-CoV-2 is having 4 additional amino acids which are new addition to it. Okay, and this addition of 4 new amino acids in the spike protein, especially the RBP region, which is called as receptor binding protein, this spike protein, the change with the additional new 4 amino acid have made this virus capable of infecting the human as a host, or you can say access to the human cell. Because you see, if this is the human cell, okay, there are certain receptors, for example ACE2 in this particular case. So this addition of 4 amino acid have got a new key, a very perfect key to this protein to come and attach to the human cells by virtue of binding to the ACE2 receptor. So this addition was novel, and that is why this is a novel or new coronavirus virus having an additional capacity to infect the human host or cells. You see, all the viruses cannot infect all the hosts. For example, I am working on papaya virus. So this virus cannot go and infect apple. So this virus has, in the course of evolution or in the due course of time, somehow got naturally selected with this new additional amino acid sequence, and it could be it got the capacity to get itself attached to the ACE2 receptor of the human, thus infecting the humans. Interestingly, None of the coronavirus isolates sequence from the bat had these 4 additional amino acid in the spike protein. Now there is another animal, pangolin, which is an anteater. So when the coronavirus is found in pangolin as well, so when the viruses were isolated from the pangolin and they were sequenced, this additional 4 amino acids in the spike protein were found there. But the rest of the genomic sequence of the pangolin was not matching much with SARS-CoV-2. So still this question is lurching around that if there is an intermediate carrier or not. If yes, which animal is to be said to be an intermediate carrier. And you must have noticed that, you see, if this is an ACE2 receptor, then naturally this animal which we are looking for should be having some kind of resemblance to this ACE2 receptor, so that this virus is coming from there. So you see the animals from the cat family, feline, mongoose, pangolin, are having this kind of receptor, but still the work is going on. You see, you have to salute the scientists and the researchers who are working day and night to understand the coronavirus, its epidemiology, structure, and so many various aspects of this disease. Because you see, this virus just came in December, November, and by the time people came to know about it all over the world, this was like December and January, and then all those lockdowns. So it is really difficult for the scientists to go to the lab, get all those chemicals, essential things. So in these tough conditions, you see there is a bombardment of information. People are doing research, publishing paper, and every day we are getting new reports on this. Some are contradictory to the previous reports, some are endorsing. But you see, this is a very short time, and after all, it is the scientists who are working day and night who are giving all these reports, because of which we are able to devise the management strategy. So nonetheless, you must have read this also, that tiger from the New York Zoo was found to be corona positive. So there is, if there is some animal intermediate carrier, we have to find it out, because you see, all those lockdown strategies will be failed if this reservoir is still sitting in the wild, and anytime it will be the reason of yet another outbreak of this disease. Now WHO has recently given this directive to investigate the origin of this virus, and a team is soon going to visit China, and China has agreed to it. So we see some kind of hope in this. So now if you talk about the structure of this virus, you see, this has a shape of corona, like solar corona. So if you have read physics in your class 10th and 12th, जैसे सूरज की किरणें निकलती हैं, solar corona, the structure resembles like this because of the spike proteins which are protruding out from the outer surface. This is quite a big virus. Big virus, when I say this with reference to viruses, so you see viruses are in nanometer. So nanometer is a very small unit, but you see this is from 80 nanometer to somewhere 120 nanometer in size. So nanometer means there is a meter, then 10 to the power minus 2 centimeter, 10 to the power minus 3 millimeter, 10 to the power minus 6 micrometer, and then 10 to the power minus 9 nanometer. So this is the size of this virus. It's very, very minute virus particle. And if you want to understand it in a better manner, you see the strand of your hair, the thickness of your hair strand. So that is roughly 80,000 nanometer thick. So this is like 10,000 less in thickness than that strand of hair or a thickness of the paper. So this is the magnitude of the size of this virus. And if you closely study it, as I have been telling my students also, this is an enveloped virus. So these kind of viruses are called enveloped virus. There is an outer layer of lipid, and that is why you wash your hands with soap and water to disrupt or to burst open the lipid layer, which is nothing but oil, and this virus is, you can say, destroyed or killed or disintegrated. Okay, then if you cut a transverse section of this virus, I have made yet another model for you to understand. If you cut a transverse section of the virus, this is hollow, okay, and then there is a nucleocapsid protein, coat protein kind of thing, okay, and there are spike proteins, envelope proteins, membrane proteins which are on the outer surface, and this is the genetic material of the virus, which is positive single strand RNA. So you see, you are a multicellular organism and you are made up of cells. So inside your cells there is a nucleus, and inside the nucleus you all know there is DNA, and that is a genetic material. Okay, this is a heritable material. This is the blueprint of your life. Similarly, the genetic material of this coronavirus is RNA, single strand positive RNA. Okay. So now this virus goes and gets itself attached to human cells because of all those changes in the spike protein which I just told you now. Okay. Now how it goes inside your body. So when an infected person sneezes or coughs or even speaks with force, there is a release of droplets or aerosol formation is there, inside which these virus particles are there. And now if a healthy person comes in close contact, that is why people say that you be at least 2 meters apart from the infected person, you inhale the same droplets or aerosols and this enters inside your body. And that is why precisely wearing a mask is very important, more so important for an infected person, because to avoid this droplet or aerosol coming out into the surrounding. And of course it is very important for a healthy person also not to inhale the very aerosol or the very droplets. Okay, and you have to maintain a distance of 2 meters because of this transmission studies which people have done on this particular virus. So when these aerosols or droplets they fall on some object and accidentally you touch that object, this virus is transferred to your hand, and when innocently you touch your mouth or nose or eyes, this gets entry inside your system, and then this virus goes inside your system and binds to the host cell, that is for example lung cells having ACE2 receptor, and then it starts giving you the sickness or the problem. So how it enters the body and what it does inside the body, this is a very interesting thing which all the students and even general people should understand. So this goes inside the system, inside the body, binds itself to the host cell, and then what it does, it releases the RNA inside the cell. And as I told you that your cell is having all the machinery for the central dogma of the molecular biology, that is it can replicate, transcribe and translate. So your DNA actually first makes RNA, and this RNA is translated into protein, structural or functional proteins, and that is how the things go on in the central dogma of molecular biology. So this virus, it inserts the RNA inside your cell and hijacks your cellular machinery. So it uses your own machinery to transcribe, to replicate and to translate its protein. Okay, and then it keeps on doing it, makes its own protein, makes its own genome, many copies of that, and packs its genome in the protein, and thus makes many copies of coronavirus inside your cell using your own cell's machinery. And this keeps on going, and then when all resources are depleted, the cell is burst open and virus particles are released. They go and they infect the adjoining cells, and they also come out from your respiratory tract, infecting other people or releasing it in the surrounding. Now this process keeps on going, and when this process keeps on going, either you have to have an immunity to stop this process, or you need to have the medicine to stop this process. Right now we don't have much medicines which we can say are the ultimate cure for coronavirus. People are talking about hydroxychloroquine or remdesivir, which stops the replication of RNA inside the system, or ACE2 inhibitors, but anticoagulants, anti-inflammatory. But you see, these are managing, but as such we don't have a drug right now, or for that matter for most of the viruses, that okay, this is the cure for this particular virus. So this keeps on repeating. Virus enters inside the cell, multiplies, infects the adjoining cells, and your body gets sick. Okay, so now coming to the next very interesting thing, how your body responds now. Okay, now the virus has entered, and then we must know हमारी body का respond क्या होता है. So in that case you must realize that your body doesn't know what this virus is. It's absolutely new virus to your body also. So this virus enters inside your body and your immune system has absolutely no clue that what kind of defense mechanism should I do. So there are natural killer cells in your body which do not identify the virus, but they go and kill the cells which are infected. They can identify the infected cells, and then in the process they also kill some healthy cells. They kill the infected cells, natural killer cells of your body, that is the first line of your defense, and they also kill the healthy cells. And then comes the macrophages which clear this debris of the killed cells by the natural killer cells. And then this is the stage where you start having the sore throat and cough, etc., etc. These symptoms start appearing. Then the macrophages tell the brain कि भाई कुछ तो करना है. So brain signals that okay, increase the temperature of your body. When the body temperature is increased, all the cellular machinery, cellular machines, they get slowed down, assuming that virus will also be weakened. Okay, and this is the final battle your body is fighting to get rid of this germ or virus. Okay, to get rid of the germs in general also. So if this virus is still persisting, the macrophages send yet another signal to the brain that please send some special commandos, black commandos type of force, because it's not getting control. Then comes the dendritic cells which engulf this virus, and they display these antigens on the outer side. So these dendritic cells are now antigen presenting cells which flag the antigen on the outer side, and then they tell the T helper cells that look, this is the kind of antigen, please make some kind of antibodies and make some kind of immune response against this antigen. Then T helper cells produce T cytotoxic cells and B cells which produce the antibodies. And these antibodies are Y-shaped molecules, and these antibodies produced against the very antigen then go and identify this antigen and bind to it, thus deactivating the virus or neutralize the virus and not let the virus go and bind to the human cells and infect it. So that is the process of the response of your body or immunity, how it goes. You see, people tell you to build your immunity. The best bet against this virus is having a strong immunity. So this is the general immunity which functions. And yes, these B cells and T cells are in most of the cases are long living memory cells. So they patrol your body throughout the life or for a longer duration at least. And then when this actual virus comes, they recognize these antigens and these antibodies go and bind to it and neutralize it. Okay, now if you have got a hint of this, how this immune system works, this is very interesting for you to understand that these antibody testing kits are working on this principle only. Okay, so you read in the newspaper that there are two types of detection system of coronavirus or COVID-19, and one is RT-PCR, another is antibody testing system. So these antibodies, you see, these are of two types. One is IgM and another is IgG. So when the body gets infection and when body starts to react in terms of immunology or in terms of immunity, first IgM are produced, and these IgMs within the 3 to 7 days are produced, and these IgMs are not very, you can say, effective as such to neutralize a virus. And then within the 7 to 10 days, another line IgG antibodies are produced which are very, very efficient in binding to the virus and neutralize it. So you see, when IgM is there and IgG is there, that gives or shows that your body is responding to the antigen or to the virus. So now your antibody testing kit actually is an indirect testing kit which detects the presence of these immunoglobulins or these IgM or IgG. So now you can very well infer the results of the antibody testing kit if it is IgM only positive after the antibody testing kit result. You can very well say that body is currently infected, immunity has not yet been developed, and person is a carrier, it's a spreader. and it is currently having virus, is infected by the virus. If IgM and IgG both are positive in your antibody test, you can say that person is currently infected with the virus and the immune system is gearing up to fight the virus. And if the result of your antibody test are only IgG positive, you can very well say that this person is now on the path of recovery or had an past exposure of this particular virus, and this person is going to be healthy or recover and sort of some kind of immunity. We cannot say at this moment whether this kind of immunity which the body will give will be long lived or lifelong, or whether virus will change and come as SARS-CoV-3. So but as a general principle, yes, these antibodies will be giving you immunity. When the next time the virus comes, it will attack it. So now you see, in the RT-PCR detection system, RT-PCR is a direct testing kit. So what it does, you take the swab sample, so it directly detects the presence of virus inside the body, while antibody testing kit decides or detects the presence of antibodies which are produced against this virus as a response. In the RT-PCR, the PCR actually amplifies this RNA, okay, and then the presence of this RNA shows that yes, person is currently infected with virus. So my take on this is that these two tests are different, but as a science student we should understand, or on a lighter note, if a RT-PCR gives somebody result positive, the expression should be, oh my god, this person is infected or corona positive. And if antibody testing kit gives you IgG positive, then it should be, thank god, the person was infected, recovered, immune. Okay, but the point is that not only this person is immune, what we should understand, this person is non-carrier also now. So such I think maybe some seniors or professionals in the medical sciences can throw more light to it. But when a person is coming for testing, whether it is positive or negative, RT-PCR test should be employed, because it's a very sensitive, very efficient, very accurate test, very sophisticated test. Okay. But when the surveillance is going on or survey is being conducted on the masses, on the people, then antibody testing kit should be employed, because it is more informative in nature. It not only tells you whether a person is positive or negative, it also tells you whether it has recovered and attained the immunity and hence become a non-carrier. Though there are flaws with antibody testing kit also, like false positive or false negative, but still, if things are okay in general, this kind of picture should be painted. So now you know very well about these two testing kits which you read so much about in the newspaper. Now, if medicines are not there and our body is fighting and there are so many casualties, as I read it to you in the starting of my lecture, what to do? Then vaccines are showing some kind of hope. Again, I will say, you see, this is the unprecedented example of development of vaccine. The minimum record of vaccine development till date is 3 to 5 years. Okay, but now this virus just came to our knowledge, you say, in January 2020, and within a span of 4-5 months people are expecting the vaccine to come, and actually many labs are working day and night. Again, as I told you, the scientists, the research scholars, researchers are working day and night in order to, in this particular direction, to find a vaccine. And this is a new virus altogether. The genome sequences, everything is new, and this kind of information they are reading, then they are planning, they are zeroing down the candidate gene, and so many other things are there. So you see, if you talk about vaccines actually prime your body or train your body without infecting or without making sick, your body making sick. They prime your body to produce antibodies against the very antigen. Okay, so the antibodies are produced against the very antigen, because vaccine, you have been immunized with the vaccine. So vaccine, you have to understand what types of vaccines are there and what is their status. So basically there are 4 types of vaccine which are produced. So I will just quickly tell you so that you understand that part also, and after that reading newspaper will be very interesting for you. So you see, one is called as virus vaccines. So in this, the virus is injected, but it is either heat killed or chemically killed virus. So this virus is killed, it's a dead body, it will enter inside your body, but it cannot do any harm, and the information of the antigen has been noted by the body. So body will recognize the spike proteins or the outer proteins, and body will start making antibodies, and since it is heat killed virus, it can not do any harm to you. So your body will be primed or evoke, or it will elicit the immune response. And this immune response, when the actual virus will come, the antibodies are already there, they will come and bind to it and neutralize it. Another type of vaccines in the virus vaccines are called as live attenuated vaccines. So in this case, the virus is live, you see, but it is attenuated, it is weakened. So this virus is passed through many human and animal cells, and then this is weakened. So this is genetically altered, that this is a very mild type of virus now, but the structure is intact. And when this live attenuated virus is administered or injected into the human, again the information goes about the antigen and the antibodies are produced. So this is the most common type of vaccine, like mumps, rubella, measles, chickenpox, oral polio. So all these vaccines are produced by this method only. And you will be happy to note that Serum Institute of India, a firm based in Pune, along with Codagenics in US, is doing quite a lot of work with reference to live attenuated vaccine against coronavirus. So I think 10-12 labs are working all over the world on this particular vaccine. But see, the procedure is quite standardized, people know how to live attenuate the virus, and they are working, but this is very risky. So many trials, safety trials, and many checkpoints are to be checked before the release of this particular vaccine. Another type of vaccine, this is the first. Another type of vaccine are called as protein subunit vaccine. In this, it has nothing to do with the virus, you just take out the protein. Okay, so this protein is to be injected. So how to do that? So people isolate the genome, okay, the part of the genome, the gene which is coding for this particular protein, and this gene is introduced into laboratory microorganisms, say bacteria or even plant system, and then these plants or these bacteria start producing this protein in the labs, in the media. This protein is then purified, isolated, purified, and then several tests are done to check its efficacy, and then this protein is injected into the human body, and then human body of course recognizes this is a small protein, so some adjuvants or some additional binding is required, but nonetheless human body recognizes this antigen and they start producing the antibody. When actually the live virus comes having the same protein subunits, the antibody goes and binds to it. These subunit proteins have not been tested. In case of SARS, actually these protein subunits were injected and a vaccine was produced against it, but as I said, human trials could not be conducted on this particular disease SARS, because by the time the clinical trials were over and the third stage trials were going on, the disease was not there anymore. So you see, the human testing was not done in case of SARS, but protein subunit based vaccine was actually prepared against the SARS virus. Now the third type of vaccine is called as adenoviral vector vaccine. Okay, so this is the third type of vaccine where a laboratory virus, you can say a very vector kind of virus, which is altogether a different virus that has nothing to do with the coronavirus. So this adenovirus is taken, but the outer layer of this virus codes for the same proteins, okay, same antigens. So this genetically altered adenoviral vector vaccines are used, wherein the antigen is same, but otherwise the virus is genetically altered and is a laboratory strain, you can say. So it does no harm to your body. And this when injected into the body, again provokes or evokes or elicits the immune response. Now you see they can be replicating or they can be non-replicating kind, and again Serum Institute of India, Pune, and Oxford University London have done a lot of work in this area, and they are almost at the advanced stage of this vaccine production. So they have also tested it on 600 humans, and trial on 6,000 humans are in pipeline. But yesterday I was reading there were some negative reports about animals which didn't respond so well against this particular viral adenoviral vector vaccine. So I still reports are to become, but till now this is quite in an advanced stage. And then the fourth type of vaccines are DNA and RNA based vaccines. These are called as the third generation vaccines. Okay, so these are very safe to use, because in this type of vaccines you only introduce the genetic material, naked DNA or naked RNA, no protein, no virus, nothing. Okay, and this DNA is cloned into some kind of plasmid, and then with the help of some techniques like electroporation, or RNA is encapsulated inside the lipid layer. This is injected inside the human body. This lipid layer fuses with the cell membrane of the human cells, and this RNA gets the entry inside the human cells, and this RNA or DNA then codes for the very proteins. Body gets the information, antibodies are produced. So in this case also Moderna Pharma, you all must have read, and those who are interested in share markets must have bought a lot of shares of Moderna company, because they have done very successful trials and are again in a very advanced stage of vaccine production, and their results are very promising and positive also, the RNA based vaccines. And there is yet another company, Inovio, which is producing DNA based vaccines. Drawback is this, that none of the DNA and RNA based vaccines have been licensed so far. So you see, even the reputation of this technique, DNA and RNA based vaccine, is at stake. So not only these companies have to produce the vaccines against the coronavirus, they have to also defend the stake. So you see, and this Inovio company is also producing DNA based vaccine, and this is funded by Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You must be knowing that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the biggest fund giver for the vaccine production all over the world. So I was reading this interview of Bill Gates, and he said minimum 18 months for this type of vaccine to come, and even with 70% of the efficacy, they think they will be able to control this problem of corona crisis. But you see, developing a vaccine, and how soon, the soon is like 18 months still, or 2 years. Okay, and developing a vaccine, producing at such large scale, and then immunizing 7 billion people of this planet, and that too if a single dose is required. Suppose a second dose is also required, you can understand 14 billion doses to be administered to the population of this planet. And you see, this particular issue is all the more important, because you see some of the vaccines, for example in case of chickenpox, a single dose is okay. In some case like tetanus, every 5 to 10 years the shot is to be repeated. In case of flu, the shot is to be given every year. So we still don't know. This is a very preliminary stage of understanding this virus and the kind of management strategies people are working on. So you see, this many doses and these many doses to be administered. But I will say India is in a very better position still, because we have all the things in the pipeline. We are doing this immunization program throughout since many years, and for example Pulse Polio Abhiyan, so people, workers know what to do, how to do their jobs, and chains are there, centers are there, and trained people are there. So if everything goes all right, India is a leading country, I will say, for vaccine production, because 15 major projects are being carried out in the national and in institutes of India like IIT, ICER, CMC Vellore, NII, Serum Institute of India, Bharat Biotech Hyderabad, and our Prime Minister Mr. Modi has given 100 crore of funding from PM Care Fund only for this particular project of vaccine development. So let us be very hopeful, and let us see that if these vaccines come very soon in near future. Now, till vaccines are coming, how to manage the corona crisis? Okay, so there are two theories people are working, or several countries in the world are working on. One is lockdown and one is herd immunity. And as I said, these two theories are very contrary in nature. Lockdown says stay in the home, completely lock up yourself so that the virus doesn't get a new host to transmit and further spread the disease. Okay, but whenever you will go out and you will come in contact of an infected person, chances of you getting infection again. So virus is still persisting unless you follow a very strict lockdown, like the country like New Zealand. Okay, they have followed such strict lockdown procedures that the completely they could eradicate the virus. But how long? They have sealed their country. But then again, after everything goes okay, people will be traveling. New Zealand people will be coming to other countries, and this strategy has to be done in a balanced manner, like lockdown, red zone, green zone, orange zone, uplifting the lockdown, and again you have to do it. Another strategy is herd immunity, and that is based on the principle that if 70% of the people in the population are infected, recovered, immune, and non-carrier, then remaining 30%, which is the vulnerable group, will also not get the disease. So the whole herd will become the immune. And UK and Sweden are two countries who are working on this principle. UK didn't do so well, as you read in the news, with the Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson himself falling prey to this disease. But Sweden did, after initial hiccups, Sweden did fairly well as compared to its other European counterparts. So you see, you have to make a balance. India is doing pretty well in this particular strategy, doing the lockdown, uplifting the lockdown. But my take on this issue is, at any time, the number of infected people should not exceed the number of beds available for the COVID-19 patients. So currently more than 3 lakhs bed for COVID-19 patients, and 6 lakhs extra bed for isolation centers have been earmarked for the COVID disease. But we definitely have to increase this 10 times more in order to uplift the lockdown, and we have to see in what ratio the people are falling sick. So a good balance between, and we never know, with this 80% of asymptomatic case, probably we are heading towards herd immunity. And this ratio of herd immunity also varies from disease to disease. For example, in case of polio, the herd immunity is achieved by 90% of people getting infection and getting immune and getting recovered and then become non-carrier. In case of measles, it's 85%. So, and that too if the virus doesn't change itself and our immunity is long-lived. So this is my take on lockdown and herd immunity, and I think a country like India, we have to have a fairly good balance. So you see, when this herd immunity approach was taken up in Sweden, the major brunt was borne by the people in the old age home. So people who are old or who are immunocompromised or who are in the high risk group, like they are diabetics or they are having cardiovascular problems, they are in trouble. So herd immunity has to be followed very cautiously if it is natural. But if it is vaccine assisted, I think we can achieve the goal. So you see, things are still in between, but a good balance between lockdown and heading towards herd immunity gradually should do the job. And now I can see I want more time, but now quickly some do's and don'ts to manage this COVID-19. So you see, you have to wash your hands with soap and water. Now you understand very well the virus, outer coat, enveloped virus made up of lipid, that is nothing but oil. So you have to wash it away with soap and water. Second thing, you have to wear mask. More important for the infected people and now equally important for the healthy person, so that the virus does not come out in the form of droplets or aerosol from the infected person and healthy person doesn't inhale it. Maintain a physical distance of 2 meters or so at least. Don't go out into the crowd because this virus can can enter in your system in close proximity. Now you understand this very well. Another take of mine is installation of UVC lights in offices and classrooms, especially like university or administrative offices, because you see, and these lights with such kind of penetration and ionizing surface sterilization property, where soap, water or alcohol based sanitizers cannot work like on paper, this can be done after installation of lights, and you see it seems they can fry the human cells, so germs are killed and surface sterilization is done. But it has to be used very cautiously. When all the offices are closed in the night, it has to be lit after locking, and then the switch should be on the outside door, and first thing you have to do after coming to your office is to switch off these lights. So this can also be something which we can think upon. All the offices should be installed with portable wash basin kind of things, where people before entering the main entrance could wash their hands with soap and water. And finally, Arogya Setu app, this is to be installed because it can trace, it can track, it can alert you if you are coming in contact with some kind of infected person. You see, I was listening to the lecture of Professor Preeti Saxena. She's dean in the School of Legal Studies here. It was a very interesting lecture, and she said that in Indian Constitution, the citizens of India have got certain rights, okay? But with those rights comes the responsibilities, and this is your moral responsibility as an Indian citizen to protect yourself by following all these do's and don'ts, and to protect people around you. Okay, so this is your moral responsibility to follow all the regulations which are coming to you time to time as a responsible citizens. Well, as a good practice, I don't think so there is anything special which you should eat or not eat for COVID-19. In general, all the healthy lifestyle things which you do for your general immunity built up stands good for COVID-19 as well. So eat protein rich food, eat vitamin C, vitamin E, antioxidant, eat as many colored vegetables and fruits as you can, and then some kind of light exercises, breathing exercises, pranayam, etc. Some kind of focused exercises on your lymphatic glands, so that immunity can be built up. And all these good practices will keep you healthy even for your general health. So my time is going up. So with these words, I would like to say to you that please follow all these regulations, be healthy and be safe. Together we can fight COVID-19, and we should emerge as a winner against this disease. This is a serious situation, I understand, in front of all of us and in front of our country, but still we have to fight with it. So God bless you all. Be happy, be safe. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Namaskar. I will answer all your questions later on. Namaskar. Thank you. Shall I switch it off?